All right, so get this. We're diving into session #2 of this Master Force Life course. And
Oh, cool.
yeah, and just imagine being handed these tools and told they can like amplify your life force.
Hmm.
I know, right? Pretty wild. We've got all kinds of stuff to unpack here. Slides, journal prompts, even a recommended video called The Power of Failing.
Wow.
Yeah, so let's see what we can glean from this session and what it might have in store for us.
Well, what immediately caught my eye is this whole idea of a life force. It's not exactly a new concept, is it?
No, not really.
Different cultures and philosophies have their own terms for it, like chi or prana or even just vital energy, but they all kind of point to this same idea that there's this energy within us that makes us tick.
Right, exactly. And this session is all about strengthening that force, and that's where these three principles come in.
Okay?
And the first thing that stood out to me was this big emphasis on community, journaling, discussing your experiences with a buddy, and even connecting with other people taking the course.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's almost like they're deliberately creating this support system, recognizing that working with these concepts can be kind of tricky.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not just about you learning on your own, but about sharing your experiences and insights with others.
I like that. And they even suggest belly breathing during these conversations.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's smart. Bringing in mindfulness and emotional regulation techniques like deep breathing could be so helpful, especially when you're exploring topics that could feel vulnerable or challenging.
Totally. So let's get into the principles themselves.
Okay.
Principle #1 Be a Mirror. The slide literally says, be a mirror of greatness for others to see themselves. What do you make of that?
Hmm. It's a really interesting concept. It seems to suggest that we can inspire and uplift others, not by telling them they're great, but by actually embodying the qualities that help them see their own potential.
So it's more about leading by example.
Yeah, I think so, like reflecting the qualities we admire back at others.
I like that. Okay, on to principle #2 Self-Care. This one is all about raising and maintaining your own vibration. Now, what does vibration even mean in this context?
That's a good question.
Is it talking about our energy levels, our mood?
I think you're on the right track here. Vibration probably refers to our overall state of being, our energy, our emotions, our outlook on life. It's suggesting that what's going on inside of us can actually rip it out and affect our experiences in the world.
And they say that this self-care principle should, over time, become your way of being. That sounds like a pretty good shift in mindset and habits.
It does, doesn't it? It's not just about doing little things for yourself here and there, like taking a bath or going for a walk. It's about creating a whole lifestyle that prioritizes your well-being on a fundamental level.
Wow. Okay, let's move on to principle #3 No Rescuing.
Oh,
And they don't mess around here. They say, under no circumstances do you attempt to use coaching to rescue another going through life challenges. Whoa.
that's pretty intense. It sounds like they're advocating for a tough love kind of approach, encouraging self-reliance and personal growth, even if it means allowing others to struggle.
And remember that video they recommended, The Power of Failing? It ties in perfectly with this principle.
Oh, yeah. It's like embracing failure is actually a key part of becoming self-reliant and growing. By letting people figure things out on their own, even if they stumble along the way, we give them the space to learn valuable lessons and become more resilient.
It's kind of like that saying, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, teach a man a fish and you feed him for a lifetime.
Right.
But in this case, it's more like, let someone fall while learning to fish and they'll truly master the skill.
Aha! I love that analogy.
And to really drive this point home, they have this other bold statement on one of the slides, expect to self-rescue, no one is coming.
Whoa.
I know, right? Do you think that's empowering or just kind of isolating?
That's a really good question, and I think the answer really depends on the individual and their perspective. Some people might find it incredibly liberating, like a call to be radically self-reliant,
Right.
but others might feel overwhelmed by the thought of facing challenges completely alone.
That makes sense. So how do they bring all these principles together in a practical way?
Well, the session wraps up with a bunch of journal prompts to help people reflect on each principle and apply it to their own lives.
I see. So they lay out these overarching principles and then they give you these prompts to really make you think about how they show up in your own life.
Exactly. It takes those abstract concepts and makes them feel personal and actionable.
What kind of journal prompts are we talking about here?
Well, they ask things like, how can you use mirror work effectively? How can you take responsibility for your own vibration? And what challenges come up when you avoid rescuing others? That last one seems particularly thought-provoking.
It really does. Imagine the insights you could gain just by honestly trying to answer that question. It could be challenging, but also incredibly illuminating.
Definitely. And then to top it all off, they ask participants to summarize their main takeaways and discuss any challenges with the course facilitator.
It's like this built-in feedback loop for getting more personalized guidance.
Yeah, it is. It feels like they've put a lot of thought into creating a truly well-rounded, learning experience.
They have. So we've got these three principles: be a mirror, self-care, no rescuing, all focused on personal growth and empowerment. But that no rescuing principle is the one that keeps swirling around in my mind. Isn't it our natural instinct to help others when they're struggling?
Of course, it's totally natural to want to help. But what this principle is trying to get at, I think, is that sometimes our attempts to rescue others can actually do more harm than good. We might actually be hindering their growth.
So instead of sweeping in to save the day, we should just step back and let them face their challenges and learn from them, even if it's hard to watch.
It seems counterintuitive, but that's the idea. It's about respecting their autonomy, believing in their ability to overcome obstacles, and understanding that failure is often a necessary part of learning and growing.
But where do we draw the line? What if someone's really hurting? What if they're making choices that are harmful to themselves or even to other people?
Those are really tough questions. And I think the answer depends on the specific situation. There's a big difference between offering someone support and actually enabling harmful behavior.
And that's where that whole expect to self-rescue idea comes in, right? Ultimately, everyone is responsible for their own choices and actions.
Exactly. We can offer support and guidance and encouragement, but we can't force anyone to change or make different choices. They have to come to those decisions on their own.
Which brings us back to that power of failing video. Do you think they're suggesting that failing is a good thing?
I don't know if they're saying it's good in the traditional sense, but it's definitely valuable. Failing can be painful and discouraging, no doubt about that. But it can also be incredibly powerful. It can push us to learn to adapt and to become more resilient.
So by allowing ourselves and others to fail, we're actually creating opportunities for growth.
Right? It's like, think about when you were learning to ride a bike. You probably fell a few times, right? But each time you fell, you learned something. You adjusted your balance, you refined your technique, and eventually you mastered the skill.
That's such a great analogy. And it makes me think about how we often try to protect kids from failing. We want to shield them from disappointment and pain.
We do. But sometimes by doing that, we might actually be preventing them from having valuable learning experiences. Of course, support and guidance are essential, but kids also need space to experiment, to make mistakes, and to learn from them.
It's about finding that balance, isn't it, between offering support and encouraging self-reliance.
Absolutely. And that balance is going to be different for everyone. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. It really depends on the individual and the situation.
So zooming back out to this Masterforce Life course, we've got these three principles, a journal, prompts, a video that seems to encourage a pretty radical approach to personal growth. It's a lot to process.
It is. There's a lot to unpack here. It definitely raises a lot of interesting questions about personal responsibility, the role of support systems, the value of failure. What are your initial thoughts on this whole no rescuing concept? It seems like a really central theme in this session.
To be honest, I'm still wrapping my head around it. Part of me really likes this idea of radical self-reliance. It's empowering to think that we have the power to shape our own lives even when things get tough.
Yeah.
But then there's this other part of me that wonders if it's really realistic. We're social creatures, right? We crave connection and support. We're not designed to go through life completely alone.
You're right. Humans are hardwired for connection. And while this course really emphasizes individual responsibility, it doesn't necessarily mean that community and support aren't important.
That's true. They do encourage you to talk about your experiences with a buddy and with other people in the course. So there's still an element of shared learning and connection.
Exactly. It's not about isolating yourself. It's about recognizing that you have the power to choose how you respond to challenges. Even when you are reaching out for support from others, it's about finding that strength within yourself.
This reminds me of a book I read about resilience. The author argued that one of the key factors in being able to bounce back from setbacks is having a strong sense of self-efficacy. That belief in your own ability to cope with difficult situations.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and it ties in perfectly with what we're seeing in this course. By telling people to expect to self-rescue, they're essentially fostering that sense of self-efficacy. They're basically saying, you've got what it takes to navigate challenges, even when things get tough.
That's a really powerful way to frame it. It's not about pretending that challenges aren't difficult. It's about developing the inner strength and resilience to overcome them, and it's about recognizing that you have that strength within you.
Exactly, and that's such an important message. It's about empowering people to take ownership of their lives, to embrace their agency, and to see challenges not as these insurmountable obstacles, but as opportunities for growth and transformation.
Absolutely, that's the heart of it.
Okay, so we've talked about the three principles, the focus on self-reliance and the value of failure. But there's one element we haven't really dug into yet, this concept of vibration.
Yeah.
They keep talking about raising and maintaining your own vibration as a key part of self-care. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's definitely a bit of an abstract concept, but I think it boils down to cultivating a positive and uplifting inner state. It's about aligning your thoughts, emotions, and actions in a way that creates this sense of harmony and well-being. It's like what you're feeling inside can radiate outwards.
So it's not just about taking care of our physical needs like eating well and exercising, it's about nurturing our mental and emotional well-being too.
Exactly. And I think the whole vibration metaphor works because it suggests that how we feel inside actually impacts our experiences in the world. Like attracts like.
Oh, I like that. So if we're putting out positive energy, we're more likely to attract positive experiences into our lives.
Right. And on the flip side, if we're stuck in a negative spiral, we're more likely to attract more negativity.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's really about taking responsibility for our own energy and recognizing that we have the power to shift it.
Exactly. It's about realizing that you have more control than you might think.
That's powerful, but how do we actually do that? How do we raise and maintain our vibration in a practical way? What are some tangible steps people can take?
That's a great question. And honestly, the answer is going to be different for everyone. What works for one person might not work for another. But there are some common practices that tend to be helpful for raising your vibration. Things like practicing gratitude is a great place to start. Taking some time each day to appreciate the good things in your life, even the little things, can really shift your focus from what you're lacking to what you already have.
I totally agree. I've noticed that when I make a conscious effort to focus on the good things, it's like more good things start to show up. It's kind of like a positive feedback loop.
Exactly. And another powerful way to raise your vibration is by spending time in nature. There's something about being out in the fresh air, surrounded by trees and plants, that can really clear your mind and lift your spirits.
Oh, I'm a huge believer in that. Even just a short walk in the park can completely change my mood. It's like nature has this calming, grounding energy that resets your whole system.
It really does. And don't underestimate the importance of doing things that bring you joy, whether it's painting, playing music, dancing, reading, or just hanging out with people you love. Whatever lights you up, make time for it. Those activities are so important for nourishing your soul and raising your vibration.
It's like filling up your cup, right? When you engage in those activities that you're passionate about, you're replenishing your energy, and that creates this positive ripple effect in all areas of your life.
Exactly. And speaking of connecting with loved ones, spending time with people who lift you up, who make you laugh, who support you, that's a huge vibration booster. Never underestimate the power of human connection.
It's true. Connection is so important. We're social beings, and those positive relationships are absolutely crucial for our overall well-being.
And last but not least, think about incorporating practices like mindfulness or meditation into your daily routine. Even just a few minutes each day of focused breathing or quiet contemplation can make a world of difference. It helps you to connect with your inner peace and raise your vibration.
It's amazing how much impact those small, consistent practices can have. It's like you're strengthening those mental and emotional muscles.
It is. It's not about trying to change everything overnight. It's about finding those little sustainable habits that you can stick with that support your overall well-being. Little things can add up over time.
So we've talked about ways to raise our vibration, but I want to circle back to that no rescuing principle. That's the part that keeps coming back to me. I can see how it could be empowering for the person being rescued, to have that space to learn and grow on their own.
Yeah, it's a shift in mindset, isn't it? It's moving away from dependence and towards a sense of empowerment. It's saying, I believe in you. I believe you have the strength to figure this out.
But I also wonder if it puts a lot of pressure on the person who's trying not to rescue. It must take a lot of restraint to hold back when you see someone you care about struggling.
It definitely does. It requires a lot of trust in the other person's ability to navigate their own challenges, and trust in the whole idea that growth can come from facing adversity.
And probably a good dose of self-awareness too, right? Being able to step back and recognize why you feel the need to rescue someone in the first place.
Absolutely. It's important to ask yourself, why do I feel compelled to jump in and fix this? Is it really about helping them, or is it more about my own discomfort? Am I trying to fix them, or am I trying to control the situation?
It's so easy to fall into those patterns without even realizing it. So how can we start to shift that? How can we move away from a rescuing mindset and towards one that's more empowering?
I think awareness is the first step. Notice when that urge to fix things arises. When you feel that impulse to jump in, just pause for a moment and ask yourself, what's really motivating me here?
So it's about creating that space between stimulus and response, right? That pause where you can consciously choose a different way of responding.
Exactly. And in that space, you can ask yourself, what would actually be the most empowering way to support this person? Maybe it's just listening without judgment or offering a different perspective. Or maybe it's simply encouraging them to tap into their own resources.
It's about shifting from fixing to empowering. Instead of giving them the answers, we're offering support and encouragement as they figure things out for themselves.
Right. And it's important to remember that allowing someone to struggle doesn't mean you don't care. It means you have faith in their ability to learn and grow from the experience.
That's such an important point. Offering support without taking away their agency. That's a powerful gift.
It is. So as we wrap up this deep dive into session #2 of the Masterforce Life Course, what key takeaway would you want to leave with our listeners? What's one nugget of wisdom that could really spark some meaningful change?
I think it's this: personal growth often requires us to embrace discomfort, to trust in our own resilience, and to be okay with the messy, imperfect nature of life. It's not about chasing constant happiness or avoiding challenges altogether. It's about cultivating the inner strength to navigate those ups and downs with grace and courage.
That's beautifully said. And it really ties back to that whole life force concept. True strength doesn't come from avoiding challenges. It comes from learning how to move through them.
Exactly. And that strength ultimately comes from within.
Well, like I was saying before, practicing gratitude is a really powerful one. Taking a few minutes each day to appreciate the good things in your life, no matter how small, can really help to shift your perspective. It's about focusing on what you have instead of what you're lacking.
It's so true. I've definitely noticed that when I make an effort to focus on the good things in my life, it's like more good things start to flow in. It's kind of like a positive feedback loop.
It is. And another powerful way to raise your vibration is to spend time in nature. There's something about being outside, surrounded by trees and plants, fresh air, that can really clear your head and just lift your spirits.
Oh, I'm a huge believer in that. Even just a short walk in the park can make a world of difference. It's like nature has this calming, grounding energy that just helps to reset your whole system.
Absolutely. And don't forget about doing things that bring you joy, whatever lights you up, whether it's painting, playing music, dancing, reading, or just spending time with loved ones. Make time for it. Those activities nourish your soul and they raise your vibration.
Yeah, it's like filling up your cup, right? When you do things you love, you're replenishing your energy, and that creates this ripple effect in all areas of your life.
Right. And speaking of connecting with loved ones, don't underestimate the power of human connection. Spending time with people who lift you up, who make you laugh, who support you, that's huge for raising your vibration.
Yeah, connection is so essential. We're social beings, and those positive relationships are so vital to our well-being.
And finally, you might want to consider adding practices like mindfulness or meditation into your daily routine. Even just a few minutes each day of focused breathing or quiet contemplation can make a big difference. It can help you tap into your inner peace and raise your vibration.
It's amazing how much of an impact those small, consistent practices can have. It's like building those mental and emotional muscles.
It is. It's not about making big drastic changes overnight. It's about incorporating these little sustainable habits into your life. Little things that support your well-being and that you can actually stick with over time.
Okay, so we've talked about ways to raise our vibration, but I want to circle back to that no rescuing principle for a minute. That one's really stuck with me. I can see how it could be so empowering for the person being rescued to have that opportunity to learn and grow on their own.
Yeah, it's about shifting from a mindset of dependence to a mindset of empowerment. It's like saying, hey, I believe in you. I believe you can handle this.
But it also makes me wonder if it puts a lot of pressure on the person who's trying not to rescue. You know, it takes a lot of restraint to hold back when you see someone you care about struggling.
It does. It definitely requires a deep level of trust. Trust in the other person's ability to navigate their own challenges and trust in the process of growth through adversity.
And probably a healthy dose of self-awareness too, right? Being able to recognize why you feel the need to jump in and rescue someone in the first place.
Absolutely. It's so important to ask yourself, what's my motivation here? Am I really acting in their best interests? Or am I trying to alleviate my own discomfort? Am I trying to fix them? Or am I trying to control the situation?
It's amazing how easy it is to fall into those patterns without even realizing it. So how do we actually start to shift that? How do we move away from that rescuing mindset and towards a more empowering approach?
Well, I think it starts with awareness, just noticing those impulses. When you feel that urge to jump in and fix things, pause for a moment and ask yourself, what's really driving me right now?
So it's about creating that space between the stimulus and response, that pause where you can choose to respond in a more conscious way.
Yes, exactly. And in that space, you can ask yourself, what would be the most empowering way to support this person? Maybe it's just listening to them without judgment, or offering a different perspective, or maybe it's just encouraging them to tap into their own resources and strengths.
Instead of giving them the answers, we're offering support and encouragement as they find their own solutions. It's about shifting from fixing to empowering.
You got it. And remember, allowing someone to struggle doesn't mean you don't care. It means you trust in their ability to learn and grow from those challenges.
It's such an important distinction. We can offer support without taking away their agency, and honestly, that can be such a powerful gift.
It really can. It's about believing in their potential.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into session #2 of the Master Force Life course, What's the one thing you want listeners to walk away with? What's that nugget of wisdom that could potentially spark some real change in their lives?
I think it's this real personal growth often requires a willingness to lean into discomfort, to trust in your own resilience and to embrace the messy, imperfect journey of life. It's not about chasing constant happiness or trying to avoid challenges altogether. It's about developing the inner strength to navigate those ups and downs with grace and courage.
That's beautifully said, and it ties back so perfectly to that life force concept we talked about earlier. True strength doesn't come from avoiding challenges. It comes from learning how to move through them.
Exactly, and that strength that comes from within, it's already there.
We only scratched the surface here, but hopefully this deep dive has given you some food for thought. Imagine diving deeper into that power of failing video. What insights might it offer? How might embracing failure actually transform your approach to your goals, your relationships, even your parenting? These are all things to ponder as you continue on your journey.
And maybe it's even worth asking yourself, what area of my life could benefit from a little less rescuing and a little more trust in the power of self-reliance? That's something to think about as you move forward.
Great advice, and remember you have the strength within you to face whatever comes your way. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.